Look, let's be real for a second. Disputes on major construction projects, they're pretty much a given. And when they do pop up, the FIDIC 2017 Red Book has a very specific roadmap to get things back on track. So today, we're going to climb what's called the dispute ladder from Clause 21, and we'll break down how it works step by step.
So picture this. It's the nightmare scenario, right? Your project is at a standstill, there's a huge multi-million-dollar disagreement brewing, and the stakes couldn't be higher. What do? Well, the good news is the FIDIC contract has a very specific multi-step process designed to handle exactly this kind of situation.
Okay, so the first thing you absolutely need to know about is the DAB. Think of them as the project's built-in first responders, designed to get on the scene early and hopefully put out the fire before it spreads. And the name itself tells you everything you need to know. Dispute, avoidance, or adjudication board. The key word there is avoidance. See, their number one job isn't actually to rule on disputes. It's to stop them from happening in the first place. It's meant to be a proactive force for good on the project, not just a reactive judge. So how's this board put together? Well, it's usually 1 or 3 expert members who are chosen jointly by both the employer and the contractor. And here's the kicker. The cost is split right down the middle, 50-50. And that's a huge deal. Why? Because it means both parties have equal skin in the game, which is absolutely crucial for keeping the board impartial and focused on what's best for the project. Now, you might be wondering, what happens if one side just drags its feet and won't appoint their member? Well, the contract has a clever fail-safe built right in. The process doesn't just grind to a halt. The appointing entity named in the contract, which is often the president of FIDIC, can be asked to step in and make the appointment for them. So one way or another, that DAB is getting formed. All right, let's start climbing. We're on the very first rung of the ladder. And honestly, this is the most valuable one. Avoiding the dispute altogether. Getting this part right can save an unbelievable amount of time, money, and headaches down the line. And this quote from the contract really spells out the vibe here. Notice the keywords. If the parties so agree, jointly request, informally discuss. This is all about collaboration. Both sides have to agree to bring an issue to the DAB for a chat. It's a conversation, not a courtroom. And this whole setup is completely by design. The process is informal, it's private, and, this is critical, nothing is officially written down. This creates a sort of safe space where both sides can talk openly, with the DAB guiding the conversation without having to worry that their words are going to be used against them later if things escalate. But what happens when that informal chat just doesn't cut it? That's when you have to start climbing the more formal rungs of the ladder, heading towards adjudication. But, and this is a big but, you can't just jump ahead. Now listen up, because this is probably one of the most critical points in the whole process. Before you can even think about formally asking the DAB to rule on your dispute, you have to follow a mandatory procedure that involves the engineer. These are what lawyers call conditions precedent. It means if you skip these steps, your entire claim could be invalidated later on. Seriously. So what are these mandatory steps? Well, there are 4 of them. First, the engineer has to try and get everyone to agree. If that doesn't work, the engineer makes their own formal determination. Then, if you're not happy with that determination, you must issue something called a notice of dissatisfaction, or an NOD. And only after you've issued that NOD does a 42-day clock start, giving you a window to finally refer the dispute to the DAB. Okay, so you've dotted your I's, crossed your T's, followed all the steps, and made your formal referral. You've now reached a key landing on this ladder. The DAA reviews everything and then issues its formal decision.
And they don't have forever to think about it. The clock is ticking. The standard time limit for the DAAB to give its decision is 84 days from when they get the referral, unless everyone agrees to give them a bit more time.
Now, this next word is incredibly important. Binding. Once the DAB issues its decision, it is immediately binding. That means both parties have to comply with it right away. It doesn't matter if you like the decision. It doesn't matter if you think it's wrong. You have to do what it says. If it says pay, you pay, period. But what if you think the decision is just plain wrong? Well, you do get a chance to challenge it, but you have to act fast. And I mean really fast. You have a very strict window of just 28 days to formally say you're dissatisfied. And this brings us to a crucial legal distinction you have to understand, the difference between binding and final and binding. A binding decision means you comply now, but you can still fight it later in arbitration if you issued that notice of dissatisfaction within the 28 days. But if you miss that 28-day deadline, the decision automatically becomes final and binding. And at that point, it's game over. The dispute is settled for good. You can't challenge it.
So, let's say you did everything right. You issued your NOD on time, you're complying with the DAB's decision for now, but you still want to fight it. Well, that brings us to the very top of the ladder, international arbitration. But hold on, before you go all in on arbitration, the contract forces one last time out. It's called amicable settlement. Basically, the parties have to make one last genuine attempt to sort things out peacefully. Now, sometimes it can feel like just a box-ticking exercise, but it is a required cooling-off period before you commit to the massive cost and complexity of arbitration. And if you ever doubt just how rigid this ladder is, look no further than this quote right from the contract. It could not be clearer. If you failed to issue a notice of dissatisfaction at the right time, either against the engineer's determination or the DAB's decision, the door to arbitration is locked and bolted. No NOD, no arbitration. Simple as that.
So with the process this rigid, this step-by-step, is there ever a skip to the end button? Can you ever just bypass this whole ladder and go straight to the top? The answer is yes, but only in a couple of very specific, very limited circumstances. The contract basically gives you two escape hatches. First, if one party just flat out refuses to comply with a binding DAB decision, the other party doesn't have to go back to the DAB, they can take that failure to comply straight to arbitration. And second, if a dispute kicks off and for whatever reason there's no DAB in place at all, then you can also go directly to arbitration.
And all of this leaves us with one final thought. The FIDIC process is designed to be this clear, structured ladder that guides you towards a resolution. But as we've seen, every single rung, every step, every deadline is critical. If you misunderstand or miss a single step, you can lock yourself out of your rights, and a process designed to resolve issues can quickly turn into a pathway to even greater conflict.